Alright, so hello and welcome back. It has been a while. All those videos were previously recorded, and now I am back making new ones after Christmas break. So, as highly requested, we're taking a look at the Napoleon's Marshals. We're going to react to all of these, and we're going to give my input for whatever that's worth. And let's get this thing started. A special thank you to my Patrons that are up there. You can join, and there's some stuff for that, but otherwise, let's get this bread.
Terror belli, decus pacis. Terror in war, ornament in peace. The words inscribed on every French marshal's baton. In France, the title of Marshal or Maréchal goes back at least to the 13th century. It represents the highest possible position of military authority. Authority symbolized by a marshal's baton.
I'm not going to interrupt very much for this, but it was in the Battle of Agincourt, actually. There was a French marshal on the field, or organizing it, and he was the dude in charge of everyone. Because how do you basically tell a whole bunch of nobles what to do if they're all the same rank? You say, this is the Marshal of France, he is second only to the king, therefore his word is basically law. That's how you do that.
The title was abolished during the French Revolution as incompatible with the egalitarian spirit of the age. But in 1804, Napoleon founded a new empire and restored the ancient rank. That year he picked 18 of France's best generals and made them Marshals of the Empire. 8 more were created in the years that followed. The Marshals outranked everyone in the new empire, apart from Napoleon's family, princes and ministers of state. They came from every background, sons of aristocrats and innkeepers, professional soldiers and those who'd learned on the job, old-school Republicans and Bonaparte loyalists. The youngest, just half the age of the oldest. And though Marshal was a civil title, not strictly a military rank, the men known to the army as les gros bonnets, the big hats, were arguably the most extraordinary, diverse, brilliant and flawed group of military commanders in history. The most favoured were showered with titles and wealth. But the price too was high. Half were wounded, 3 were killed or died of wounds. 2 were executed. This is Epic History TV's guide to Napoleon's Marshals. All 26 have been ranked according to our own evaluation of their achievements as Marshals, with expert guidance from retired Lieutenant Colonel Remy Porte, former Chief Historian of the French Army.
So we have we're going up against me, minor military historian, versus dude that did it all his life.
First, a thank you to our sponsor, Call of War.
So before we get to that, just remember that Marshals, the one distinguishing feature, especially with the French Marshals, is the fact that all of these guys, some of these guys, weren't in the military for very long before they were promoted to Marshal, which is extraordinary. You could move up the ranks very fast in Napoleon's army, or you could move up very slow. It just depends how close you are to Napoleon. And it didn't necessarily have to be a professional soldier and make your way up the ranks to become a marshal. You could be given marshal after you get the rank of colonel, they'd be promoted up. So it was a way to bypass basically a lot of bureaucracy. You could, at least in theory, do that.
More than 2,000 French generals served in the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars. Many were brilliant leaders. A few probably deserved to be marshals, more than some who were. Any selection can only be difficult and highly subjective, but here's our pick of 12 of the best. Bertrand, Napoleon's faithful aide-de-camp, who commanded 4th Corps at the Battle of Leipzig. Clausel, a veteran commander of the war in Spain. Desaix, Napoleon's close friend, killed at Marengo, aged 31.
And these are just some of the 12 best generals that could have been good marshals. And as he said, General Dessein killed 1,800. So even if Napoleon could give him a marshal's baton, he died way too early.
Prince Eugène, Napoleon's adopted son, a hero of the Russian retreat. Gérard, one of Napoleon's best corps commanders by 1814, made a marshal by King Louis-Philippe in 1830. Goudon, whose infantry division bore the brunt of the fighting at Auerstedt in 1806, died of wounds near Smolensk in 1812. Junot, who first served with Napoleon at Toulon in 1793, probably committed suicide after his fall from favour in 1813. Lasalle, the Hussar general, among the best light cavalry commanders of the Napoleonic Wars, killed at Wagram, aged 34. Maison, who told his division on the morning of Leipzig that they must win that day or all be killed, made marshal by King Charles X in 1829. Non-Souty.
So you will see that Gerard and Monson were actually made marshals later, which is a testament to their skills, and they could have proved very valuable for Napoleon if he recognized their potential and did promote them to marshals over some of the marshals that he actually did.
The heavy cavalry commander who died of wounds and exhaustion, aged 46. Saint-Hilaire, hero of Austerlitz, died of wounds received at Aspern in 1809. Vandamme, of whom Napoleon once said, "If I had to invade hell, I'd want him commanding the vanguard." And
very high respecting, that's what that means.
now, Napoleon's 26 marshals, ranked in order of merit. 26. Marshal Pérignon. When Napoleon created the first 18 marshals, 4 were honorary marshals, recognized for past service to France. Pérignon was one of these. A former officer in the Royal Army, he'd won fame in the Revolutionary Wars, fighting the Spanish on the Pyrenees front. He later served as ambassador to Spain. After a brief retirement, he was sent to Italy and commanded the French left wing at the disastrous Battle of Novi.
So just before we get into more of his stuff, his background, he's still a minor aristocrat, okay? Which probably led to problems during the Revolution, you know, him being discharged because he was an aristocrat at all. And he became Marshal 1804, one of their honorary marshals, probably retired by this point, and he was given as a legacy kind of thing. Like, this is a continuation of the same, of the French Revolution to the Empire. Ranked 17 of 26, I know who's ranked number 1. There's no surprise, it's going to be Berthier. And again, we'll get to his major battles, but his title, actually, Count of the Empire, again, it's just a title, not really meaning anything. And he died at 64. The most important thing I'd take a look at here is in 1780, he was an officer in a regiment, and then 13 years later, he was a general in the Army of the Eastern Pyrenees. That is very fast for a general to be promoted in peacetime. In wartime, that is pretty, I wouldn't say fast. I'm saying that's pretty normal for the amount of combat that was that was actually happening.
Where the army was routed by Suvorov's Russians, and Pérignon was badly wounded and captured. His appointment as honorary marshal in 1804 was a political move by Napoleon, a way to win acceptance for his new empire, by emphasizing continuity with the revolution, by rewarding its military heroes. Pérignon never held active command as a marshal, but served as governor of Parma, and later Naples. His eldest son, Pierre, was a cavalry officer, killed at Friedland in 1807. Pérignon retired in 1813, but refused to support Napoleon when he returned from exile in 1815 and was stripped of his marshal's baton. His rank was later restored by King Louis XVIII.
Which is smart of this guy, because again, Napoleon just gave him his title to basically for political gain. And he took it away for political gain, and then he got the baton back, less than 100 days later, basically. Because, fun fact, the king comes back and gives everyone that didn't side with Napoleon their ranks and stuff back. Everyone that did is going to lose a lot of their stuff.
25. Marshal Brune.
He was just proclaimed the savior of the Bavarian Bavarian Republic. By saving Holland, he also saved France from invasion. Maybe this guy was defending the coastline.
Brune was another marshal whose appointment owed much to politics. As a fiery Republican and former close ally of revolutionary leader Georges Danton, his support was politically useful for Napoleon.
Yeah, Georges Danton also killed in the revolution. He's not a very good person I would aspire to. So let's take a look at him. He's a journalist by background trade. He became a marshal in 1804. He was 8 of 26 in seniority. Aged 41. That's actually pretty young. And he has a lot of battle honors basically before Napoleon really gets going in the 1800s. So this is all basically the French Revolution. Count of the Empire, again, regular title. And then he was murdered.
Brune joined the army during the Terror, the most extreme period of the Revolution. His political connections ensured rapid promotion, and he was sent to help put down a
Okay. Yeah, no shit. So in so he was a journalist, he was never a soldier, politically active, and then 4 years later, he's promoted to brigadier general, which is pretty high. Damn, I mean, that's a general rank. So again, who you know really matters.
Counter-revolutionary revolt in Bordeaux. In 1795, as a 30-year-old brigadier general, he helped Napoleon disperse a royalist mob in Paris with the famous whiff of grape shot. Brune then served with Napoleon in Italy, fighting in several of his famous early victories. He won a reputation as a fierce divisional commander and enthusiastic plunderer of Italian towns and churches. In 1798, he commanded the French occupation of Switzerland, while extorting 200,000 francs from the wealthy Swiss communes, the equivalent of several $1 million today. It was said that Brune's personal carriage was so laden with gold when it left Switzerland that it immediately broke down. The next year he won his most important victory while commanding French forces in Holland, defeating an Anglo-Russian army at the Battle of Castricum and saving France from invasion. But a short, calamitous spell commanding the army of Italy convinced Napoleon that Brune was not fit for high command. Instead, he sent him to be ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, where in 1804 he learned that he'd been made a marshal. But Brune's lack of delicacy, combined with a towering sense of self-importance, did not make him a successful diplomat. He was recalled to France, but as governor of the Hanseatic ports, blundered again, drafting a treaty with Sweden that failed to make any mention of the French emperor. Whether a deliberate insult or act of incompetence, Napoleon was furious, and Brune was sacked. Brune spent the next 7 years at his country estate. He bitterly opposed the return of the Bourbon monarchy in 1814, and rallied to Napoleon when he returned from exile the next year.
Well, I don't know why this man would rally to Napoleon. He's not exactly on Napoleon's amazing graces, and he never really fought with Napoleon. Well, fought a little bit with Napoleon, but not much, especially in the 1800s.
But in the tumult following Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo, Brune was cornered by a royalist mob in Avignon, murdered and tossed into the River Rhône. 24. Marshal Serrurier.
He retained all the characteristics and the severity of an infantry major, an honest man with integrity and reliability, but unfortunate as a general, Napoleon. Probably what he means is he was a very good staff officer, but that was really about it. He was not meant to be made a general, but made a marshal, which is a political title, governorship kind of thing.
Serrurier was another of the 4 honorary marshals whom Napoleon wished to recognize for past service. In contrast to Brune, Serrurier was a professional soldier of the old school, a veteran of the 7 Years' War, and a stern disciplinarian. This background was not necessarily an asset during the French Revolution, when any officer who'd served in the Royal Army was viewed with suspicion. but Colonel Serrurier's training and diligence were soon recognized as assets to the new French Republic. By 1795, he was a general serving with Napoleon in Italy.
So he's age 13 when he's commissioned to the militia, which is, again, age back then, it's like, might be a little young, but that's not as egregious. He was stripped and then re-promoted, and he was a colonel, promoted to a general, serving in the army of Italy. But he's had a long career. He basically, his entire life was the military. Seniority 18 to 26. He has a few battle honors. Count of the Empire 1808, same as the rest. And he died at 77 in 1819. He's very old for a marshal, but and again, what I'm saying here is like he fought in the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War, however you want to do that. And it took him a very long time to be promoted, which does come with a lot of experience when you have to do it that way.
Where his stand against corruption and looting won him the nickname the Virgin of Italy. Serrurier was a reliable, if unspectacular, commander who won an important victory at Mondovi at a crucial moment in Napoleon's rise to fame. The following year, he accepted the Austrian surrender at the end of the long siege of Mantua. 2 years later, fighting under General Moreau's command, Serrurier and his division were cut off by the Russians and forced to surrender. Released on parole, he was back in Paris in time to support Napoleon's coup d'etat of 18 Brumaire. Serrurier then retired from active command, but Napoleon, remembering his past service, made him an honorary marshal and governor of Les Invalides, the retirement home and hospital for old soldiers. There, shortly before the fall of Paris in 1814, Serrurier oversaw the burning of more than 1,000 captured flags and standards.
Oh, that makes sense, because I remember Battle of France. I was wondering who this marshal was. He was an honorary, and that actually makes sense. He wasn't given a quote-unquote very prestigious position, but for him, it probably was, running the military hospital, and he was in Paris, quote-unquote, defending it, and having burned the standard, so right before it got attacked, basically.
To prevent them falling into Allied hands. 23. Marshal Kellerman.
I think I was probably the boldest general who ever lived, but even I wouldn't have dared to take post there. Napoleon de Kellerman's command post at the Battle of Valmy. Ooh, wow.
Kellerman was another honorary marshal, the oldest at 68, and famed throughout France as the saviour of the Revolution. A career soldier from a middle-class background, he'd seen distinguished service as a cavalry officer in the 7 Years' War. At the beginning of the Revolutionary Wars, he was a general, commanding a frontier army at the moment of greatest crisis, when it seemed foreign invasion was about to stamp out the revolution and restore the ancien régime. But at Valmy, in September 1792, Kellerman's Army of the Centre stood its ground, and with a ferocious artillery barrage, persuaded the Prussian army to withdraw. Valmy was not a stunning tactical victory, but it was a turning point of history that saved the infant French Republic. When the revolution took a more radical turn, even a war hero like Kellerman became suspected of royalist links and spent a year in prison under the threat of the guillotine.
Of course, they basically lost their damn minds with that. But it is very important to remember, so we're out of we've done the 4 honorary marshals at this point. He's seniority 15 to 26. Valmy, again, it let the French Republic revolutionary France continue for a bit. So that was important. And he enlisted as a volunteer cadet age 15. So will be an officer. And then served actively in Germany, promoted to captain 3 years later to 6 and 8 years later. And then lieutenant general in 92. So that's almost 30 years. That's almost 30 years of being a low-ranking. Again, there wasn't a war at that time, so but professional soldier nonetheless.
Acquitted and restored to command, he was poised to launch a new offensive in Italy when he was sidelined, first by General Scherer, then in favour of a rising new talent, General Bonaparte. Kellerman later specialised in army administration and training, a role he continued to perform under Napoleon, whilst also entering politics and serving as President of the Senate. His son, General François-Étienne Kellerman, followed in his father's footsteps, serving as one of Napoleon's best cavalry commanders. 22. Marshal Grouchy.
His conduct was unforeseeable, as if his army on the march, but had been struck by an earthquake and swallowed up. Napoleon on Grouchy's failure to march to his aid during the Battle of Waterloo. 22 for Marshal Grouchy. I'll see what he has to say, but I'm pretty sure that's a pretty fair assessment from what at least I got. And it was really his bad on Waterloo. But the thing with that is that Napoleon did not like marshals having independence and initiative that they would take. So when he does that, when he doesn't support Napoleon, he's technically following what Napoleon had been outlining for years by this point, especially after my boy Marshal Lance died. But
when Napoleon returned from his first exile in 1815, he created one last marshal for the upcoming campaign, Emmanuel de Grouchy. Although now infamous for failing to march to Napoleon.
Oh, that's why he's ranked. All right, I take back everything I just said. I see what's ranked number 2, or 22. He's literally the last marshal on the list. He was made right before Waterloo and utterly failed there. But he had actually fought, as you can see, he had been at Wagram, Bourdeaux, fought in the Battle of France, 1814, which I can give him credit for, Eylau, and Friedland, which were very pivotal battles, and Jena. And he's Marquis Grouchy hereditary in Count of the Empire, blah, 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 blah. So,
aid during the Battle of Waterloo. Up to that moment, Grouchy had had a long and distinguished military career. An aristocrat who embraced the French Revolution, Grouchy served with distinction throughout the Revolutionary Wars, fighting counter-revolutionaries in the Vendée and serving in Italy, where he was wounded and captured at the Battle of Novi. Under the Empire, Grouchy excelled as commander of a dragoon division in Marshal Murat's cavalry reserve.
Let me just specify this, okay? If they were officers before the revolution, you had to be an aristocrat. You had to have at least a minor aristocratic background to become an officer during the Kingdom of France / Empire, whatever you want to call that. Basically before the revolution. Some of these marshals we'll see upcoming, and maybe some of the past ones, they started as enlisted guys, and then when the revolution happened, they were able to be promoted to officers because it was the first time they were able to do so. Again, you had to be an aristocrat before the French Revolution to even be an officer. So
he was praised by the Emperor for his part in the Great French Charge at Eylau, played an important role buying time for Napoleon at Friedland, and expertly covered the French right wing at Wagram. For the invasion of Russia, he commanded 3rd Cavalry Corps and was wounded at Borodino. He survived the horrors of the retreat, but was left so exhausted it took him several months to recover. He returned for Napoleon's 1814 campaign in France, and was wounded twice more. Grouchy was made a marshal at
I'll give him credit. If he was there in 1814 fighting for France,
the start of the 100 Days campaign, and commanded Napoleon's right wing at Ligny. After the battle was won, he was ordered to pursue the retreating Prussians to prevent them joining up with Wellington's Anglo-Allied army. 2 days later, as the Battle of Waterloo raged 10 miles to the west, Grouchy made the fateful decision to follow his written orders rather than march to join Napoleon, and has been widely blamed for the French Emperor's defeat ever since. Grouchy's vilification is not wholly fair, not least because Napoleon rarely encouraged his marshals to show initiative, and often flew into rages if they deviated from his written orders. Nor should one blunder obscure the distinguished record of one of the Grande Armée's best cavalry generals. Grouchy fled.
I'll say that the blunder does put a very bad stain on him. You can, again, everyone can argue, you know. I'll give you an example. Bill Clinton. And a lot of people like Bill Clinton, but the Lewinsky scandal will forever tarnish his name. Okay, that's basically what he's remembered for. It's the same for Grouchy. He did fight for Napoleon for a very long time, and I give him credit for that. But he's going to be remembered for Waterloo either way. But hey, he was a very effective, at least, cavalry corps commander. So then he did fight for a very long time as that role.
To America after Napoleon's defeat to escape royalist reprisals, but was pardoned and returned to France in 1820.
Oh, he went to America!
21. Marshal Massena.
He was an honest man. That's not very high praise, but we'll go with it.
Massena ran away from home to join the army at the age of 15. After 20 years of uneventful service, he'd risen no higher than the rank of captain.
That is actually pretty impressive, okay? Now, as I've said before, he's a career soldier. He ran away. He enlisted in 1769 and became a captain in 1791, it seems.
But then...
Battalion des Chasseurs, so these guys. But the thing is, that's 20 years. Wow, that's 20 years to be from private to captain. In America, that means you retire and you get your pension. You get half, well, now 45%, but usually 45% to half. We'll just go with half because that's what it was originally. We'll just keep it there. You get half of your whatever pension, okay? And 20 years is your full service for that. So he'd already done that. And he'd risen no higher than captain. And as I said, you had to have an aristocratic background to be an officer of some kind. He was the son of a lawyer and a career soldier. He was never going to be a major, lieutenant colonel, general, none of that in the Kingdom of France, so before the Revolution. So he actually is very impressive to actually reach captain, being the son of a lawyer.
Came the French Revolution. Most French officers were aristocrats, who, if they did not actively oppose the revolution, were nevertheless regarded as politically suspect. The result was that 3/4 of them either fled the country or were dismissed from the army. Massena, a middle-class officer with no strong political views, reaped the benefit with meteoric promotion. By 1794, General Massena was leading the army of the Western Pyrenees to victory over the Spanish.
Think about that. He had been in the army 20 years. Reaching a rank that higher of captain. Captain is not very high, especially in this rank. Basically, you commanding a very subsection of a line infantry unit, okay? And then 3 years later, he is a general in the commanding the army of the Western Pyrenees. He is top dog now. And he's seniority 3 of the Marshals.
On what was, admittedly, a relative backwater of the Revolutionary Wars. In 1797, he was dismissed for alleged royalist sympathies, but reinstated in time to support Napoleon's coup of 18 Brumaire. By his own admission, Massena was a sensitive officer. Honest, honourable, but lacking a ruthless streak or iron will to succeed.
This sensibility has affected my spirit in such a way as to render it stupid. General Massena, 1794. I'll say that that's not the best traits for a general running the stuff, but I mean, they're good traits for a regular person.
Napoleon was aware of his limitations as a general, but made him a marshal in 1804 as part of his emphasis on continuity between the Republic and his new empire. Massena was appointed Inspector General of the Gendarmerie, France's militarized police force, and spent most of the rest of his career commanding reserve troops.
Which, fun fact, the gendarmes or gendarmerie in medieval times was actually a very elite cavalry unit paid for by the king. Now, yeah, National Guard police unit.
he only held one field command again. In light of his victorious record against the Spanish, he was given command of a corps for the 1808 invasion of Spain, operating in the south of the country with mixed success. In 1809 he was replaced by General Junot and returned to France. Moncey's finest hour came in the dying days of the Empire, leading the National Guard of Paris in a courageous but doomed defense of the French capital. In 1815, the restored King of France, Louis XVIII, ordered Marshal Moncey to preside at the trial of Marshal Ney for treason. Moncey regarded Ney as a hero for having saved so many French lives in Russia, and refused, declaring, "If I am not allowed to save my country nor my own life, then at least I will save my honor." After a short spell in prison,
I'll give this man, he might not have been an amazing tactical field commander, but he was honest, as Napoleon said, and he stood by that, and he had honor. Marshal Ney, in my opinion, should not have been shot. Stripped of his titles, yes, but I don't think he should have been shot. But that's neither here nor there. And I give this man credit. He did command the National Guard in the Battle of Paris, and he was fighting when Napoleon wasn't there to hold Paris.
Moncey was allowed to resume his military career, becoming governor of Les Invalides, in which role he presided over the repatriation of Napoleon's remains from St. Helena in 1840. At the end of the ceremony, the 86-year-old Marshal Moncey announced, "And now, let us go home to die."
As I said, he is a very honorable and sensible man. May not have been an amazing marshal and may not have been an amazing general, but you can't deny his honor and his honesty and his character traits, which are very good. And him being able to bury Napoleon was probably a moment for him, an emotional moment.
Announced, "And now, let us go home to die."
And he did that 2 years right before he died. So he's 86. So he's like 88 when he died. He's very old.
20. Marshal Poniatowski.
A man of noble character, brimming over with honor and bravery. 20th rank for Marshal Poniatowski, the only marshal that was not French, and he was Polish. I can already tell you probably why this is, and it's he didn't have a very long career as marshal. It's like a day, and then he died. So, as a marshal, I see why he's ranked 20. As a general and as a soldier, I would rank him much higher. But with 20, I probably would agree, just in the fact that he really didn't get to do much.
Prince Józef Poniatowski was the King of Poland's nephew, but his military career began as a cavalry officer in the Austrian army, even serving as aide-de-camp to Emperor Józef II himself. In 1789, he transferred to the Polish army with the rank of Major General, but could not save Poland from partition by its rapacious neighbours, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. By 1795, Poland had vanished from the map, swallowed up by its rivals. After Napoleon's defeat of Prussia in 1806, Poniatowski decided loyal service to the French Emperor was the best way to win Poland's restoration, although he never fully trusted Napoleon's aims. Sombre, serious, and brave, Poniatowski proved an able commander of Duchy of Warsaw forces in Napoleon's service. When war broke out with Austria in 1809, while Napoleon advanced on Vienna, Poniatowski waged a brilliant supporting campaign against a larger Austrian army in Galicia. For the invasion of Russia, he commanded the Polish Fifth Corps. He and his troops distinguished themselves first at Smolensk and again at Borodino, leading the attack on the right wing.
And that was a hell of an attack on the right wing.
Poniatowski and his corps performed heroically throughout the campaign.
And so basically every Polish soldier did, especially the Polish cavalry. They performed very heroically during the entirety of their service and campaign in Napoleon's armies.
Motivated in part by their old animosity towards Russia. But by the end of the retreat, Fifth Corps had been virtually destroyed. Poniatowski remained loyal to Napoleon, even though the disaster in Russia paved the way for the Russian reoccupation of Poland. He rejoined Napoleon in Germany in 1813 and was given command of the Polish Eighth Corps. On the eve of the Battle of Leipzig, he was made a marshal by Napoleon in recognition of his service and to inspire his Polish troops. Poniatowski was the only non-Frenchman to receive this honour. He and his troops fought with their usual tenacity and skill at Leipzig, holding key villages on the southern front against the Austrian and Prussian onslaught. At the end of the battle, Poniatowski commanded part of the rearguard. But their only escape route, a bridge over the Elster River, was blown up too soon. Badly wounded, Poniatowski tried to escape by riding his horse across the river, but he was swept from his saddle and drowned. He had been a marshal for just 4 days. In the short term, Poniatowski's loyalty to France achieved nothing, as following Napoleon's defeat, Russia occupied Poland for the next century. But Poniatowski's legend lived on, a model of Polish patriotism that inspired future generations.
It looks like he's wearing a old Roman cuirass, but yeah, he wouldn't. His legacy still goes on to try and fight for a Poland, whatever form it took, rather than be subjected to occupation by literally everyone. So.
19. Marshal Jourdan.
I certainly used that man very ill. Jourdan is a true patriot, and that is the answer to many things that have been said about him. So probably means he didn't support Napoleon, but he supported France first.
As a young French private, Jourdan saw combat in Georgia during the American Revolutionary War, but he then caught...
The South was not a fun campaign. And he was a private, so that means he enlisted. Yeah, no, he wasn't even an officer, not even an aristocrat.
A fever that led to his discharge and plagued him for the rest of his life.
Which, there were some fevers from like the Barbados area, so in the Caribbeans. They weren't yellow fever, I don't think, but they were fever that would, basically a virus of some sort that would, so a virus of some sort that would lead to lasting effects. For example, George Washington supposedly also got a fever in the Caribbean, and he became sterile, supposedly, from it. That's why he never had any children.
When the French Revolution began, he was elected captain of his local National Guard unit, fought at the battles of Jemappes and Hochschutter, and was rapidly promoted to general. In 1794, he made his name defeating coalition forces at the Battle of Fleurus. This was a crucial victory of the Revolutionary War, which handed France control of Belgium for 20 years. It was also notable for the French army's use of balloon reconnaissance, the first effective use of an aircraft in military history.
Which is pretty nice. And the reason you would use a balloon, Napoleon actually had balloons. I'm pretty sure he used it. I don't know if personally, but they definitely existed. Basically, because of all the smoke and stuff, you can't see anything. So, getting a bird's eye view, you can actually see pretty far out and see what's going on and where troops are and what's going on there. Now, you can't talk down. That's the problem with this. You could message, you could drop a message, you could do a pigeon, but you can't actually talk down to people unless you came down.
Jourdan became a prominent politician under the Directory, lending his name to a law that formalized France's policy of mass conscription. As a committed Republican, Jourdan refused to support Napoleon's coup of 18 Brumaire, but his fame as the victor of Fleurus was enough to ensure he became a marshal in 1804. Jourdan was on good terms with Napoleon's elder brother, Joseph, When Joseph became king of Spain in 1808, Jourdan went with him as his military advisor. But the situation in Spain would prove beyond Jourdan's military skills to solve. He faced stubborn resistance from the Spanish and Portuguese, supported by the British, and an equally stubborn refusal to cooperate from other French marshals in Spain.
You know, basically no one really wanted to listen to him or King Joseph. Soult, Moncey, Victor, and a lot of people.
Theoretically under Jourdan's command, but who repeatedly ignored his orders and openly questioned his competence. Marshal Soult in Andalusia was a prime offender, while Marshal Victor's insubordination at the Battle of Talavera contributed directly to the French defeat. Struck by another bout of ill health, Jourdan went home to recover. 2 years later he returned to Spain, but at the Battle of Vitoria in 1813, he and King Joseph were outmaneuvered and decisively beaten by Wellington, leading to the collapse of the Bonapartist Kingdom of Spain. Jourdan never held a major command again, but his 20 years of service and evident patriotism were widely recognized and respected. He was made a peer by Napoleon, a count by Louis XVIII, and died in 1833 while serving as governor of Les Invalides. Perignon, Brune, Serrurier, Keller,
He's a fair assessment of the dude. He wasn't amazing or anything, but you know.
Grouchy, Moncey, Poniatowski, Jourdan. 8 down, 18 to go. Join us for part 2, when we'll continue the countdown. Coming soon. Thank you.
So, if you guys liked that reaction that I just did there, hopefully you'll continue to support this series. The original video is in the description if you want to go check that one out with all the stuff there. Otherwise, up there is part 2 of this series in the playlist, so you can go click that and watch that. Otherwise, the other video's up there in case that one's not out. I'll see you people next time. Have a good day, and bye-bye.